Billionaire discovers his ex on the streets. The incredible transformative journey revealed. Ethan Parker, the self-made billionaire, felt an unsettling rhythm in the pulse of New York City's streets as he maneuvered his sleek, black luxury car through the bustling morning traffic. The skyscrapers loomed over him, mocking the weight of solitude pressing down on his chest. He had clawed his way to the summit of success, yet with each passing day, he found his victories increasingly hollow. Memories of broken relationships haunted him, echoes of laughter replaced by an awkward silence. Every failed connection chipped away at his sense of fulfillment, leaving behind uncertainty about the man he had become. As he approached Fifth Avenue, a flicker of movement caught his eye. There, standing on the corner under the shadow of his empire, was a woman wrapped in a threadbare coat. Ethan's heart raced, disbelief flooding his senses. Was it really Sophie? The vibrant artist who once dreamt of painting the skyline, now reduced to a figure of resilience on the unforgiving streets. The realization was a punch to the gut. Memories rushed back, late-night talks filled with bright aspirations and plans too grand for their grasp. Guilt tightened its grip around his throat. How could her world so drastically diverge from his own? Each heartbeat drummed louder in his ears, forcing him to confront a painful truth. Wealth had created an unbridgeable chasm between their lives. For all the accolades and affluence, Ethan felt a growing discomfort over what his achievements had cost him. The societal expectations weighed heavily. Was he truly successful if his fortune came at the loss of his humanity? In that moment, torn between the demands of status and the values instilled by his family, Ethan made a choice that reverberated through his core. He had to help her. He stepped out of his car, the air thick with anticipation and trepidation. As he approached, Sophie looked up, her eyes burning with a mixture of suspicion and pride. Years etched in her features made her appear hardened, her smile a relic of the past. When he offered his hand, an invitation to leave the tumult of hardship, her response was a stiff refusal laced with skepticism. Ethan's heart sank as he saw her turn away, the memory of their love now a bittersweet echo. Desperation gnawed at him. How could he convey sincerity when the chasm of wealth and privilege stood between them? Shuddering under the psychic weight of her rejection, Ethan plunged deeper into anguished self-reflection. He had dedicated decades to building an empire while Sophie's talent languished, obscured by the cruel truths of inequality. Each canvas she could share unveiled the artistry he had once adored, and yet his own success felt like shackles binding him to a life devoid of genuine connection. As he envisioned opportunities for her, resistance from the art world and ire from his social circle loomed ominously before him, encumbering the fragile hope sparking within. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. At the height of his internal conflict, Ethan's empire teetered on the brink of scandal. The relentless scrutiny of the public gaze felt sharper than ever, and he was painfully aware of the precarious position he occupied, wealth and status at the mercy of perception. He stared at Sophie from afar, her journey unfurling against obstacles he had never faced. Undeniably, this was a turning point, a chance for redemption, but with each heartbeat, doubt wove intricate knots in his resolve. Would his love for her inspire change, or was he simply another figure of privilege doomed to repeat history? The urgency of the choices ahead rippled through him. Could heartfelt connection outweigh the stigma of their tangled past? As the city buzzed around him, a heavy weight of uncertainty loomed. The answer lay just beyond reach, ready to unravel in the next fleeting moment. The chaos of the city roared around Ethan, yet all he could perceive was the unsettling stillness that enveloped him. Sophie had always been his muse, a vivid force of creativity and passion that challenged the monotony of his structured world. Now, she stood as a stark reminder of the choices he had made, choices that brought him wealth but strangled his sense of purpose. He felt an urgent need to reconnect with that part of himself, the part that appreciated art, laughed without restraint, and lived passionately. What if helping Sophie could serve as a conduit, rekindling that spark he thought extinguished by ambition. A profound epiphany gripped him. His empire, rather than a testament to his success, had been a hedge against vulnerability. It was time to confront the battle within him. Was he willing to strip away the armor of wealth and status? Ethan returned home, his mind buzzing with plans. Amid the luxurious surroundings that had become a gilded cage, he began to plot a new path, not just for Sophie, but for himself. He sought to determine how he could leverage his resources for true growth, the kind that wasn't measured in dollar signs. Digging deeper into his past, he unearthed his connections in the art world, examining them with a newfound intention. Could he open doors for Sophie? More importantly, could he learn from her journey and understand the struggles that befell those who didn't share his privileges? Days turned into weeks as he transformed from a solitary titan to a figure emboldened by a burgeoning purpose. He committed to reaching out to artists and gallery owners, reintroducing himself not as a billionaire, but as someone seeking genuine partnerships. The art community was a labyrinth, full of eccentric personalities and fierce competition, and making inroads proved more challenging than he'd anticipated. Ethan remembered the ease with which he once navigated boardrooms, but this felt different. He was a newcomer again, stripped of his title. Each time he introduced himself, the weight of his privilege clung to him, prompting questions he struggled to answer. Was he merely trying to assuage his conscience, or was there a genuine desire to see Sophie flourish? His motivations felt shaky, rough around the edges. Surely, she would see through any facade. One evening, deeply engrossed in his reflections, he received a call from an old friend, a curator at a prominent gallery. They were curating a show to feature local artists and had an open slot for a new talent. "You know, Ethan, you have a name in this world. Use it to uplift someone who deserves it," the curator urged, unaware of the baptism by fire he had been undertaking. The possibility lit a fire in him. This could be Sophie's moment. Yet another hurdle lurked in the shadows. How could he approach her without reawakening old scars? His heart raced at the thought of facing her again, but he couldn't dismiss the urgency pulsing within him. Ethan decided he would invite her to meet, not as a benefactor but as an equal. They needed to rediscover what had been lost in the rush of ambition and history. Could they both transcend their respective prisons? Could she see him not as the billionaire but the man who once shared dreams with her under the bright city sky? With that thought coursing through him, he picked up his phone. The stakes had never been higher. The time had come to either bridge the chasm or remain on opposing shores, both of them fighting their own wars. As he dialed, the uncertainty of her answer loomed. A reckoning awaited on the other end of the line. The phone rang. Each ring echoed louder than the chaos of the city outside. Ethan braced himself, his heart thumping in rhythm with the chimes. The prospect of reconnecting with Sophie felt both exhilarating and terrifying. He hadn't prepared for this moment, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. Was he ready to confront the past and potentially face her disappointment? When her voice broke through, it was softer than he remembered, tinted with hesitance. "Ethan." "Hi, Sophie." "It's me," he replied, forcing calmness into his tone despite the tumult in his chest. They exchanged pleasantries that hung awkwardly in the air, words that felt like fragile glass suspended between two vastly different worlds. He could sense the distance loaded in each syllable, an echo of their shared past that had been fractured by ambition and time. "I was thinking if you're free, maybe we could meet." His offer stumbled out, a clumsy gesture that he hoped did not evoke the familiar wounds. "Meet?" she echoed. He heard the undercurrent of skepticism lacing her voice. "Why now?" Her question pierced through him, exposing the raw nerve of his intentions. Why now? Because he finally understood that wealth couldn't fill the void left by human connection. Because he missed her. "I want to talk, Sophie. About the art show, and about us this time. I want to listen," he implored, desperation creeping into his voice. After a hesitant pause, she acquiesced. A time and place were set, but the relief that flooded him was countered by fear. What if she saw through him? What if she had moved on? As the days rustled by before their meeting, the anticipation grew heavier. Ethan spent his nights reading about emerging artists, revisiting emotions that long lay dormant within him. He wanted to connect genuinely, not just as a powerful figure orbiting the art world, but as a man who yearned to understand and celebrate someone else's voice. When the day arrived, he stood outside the small cafe where they had agreed to meet, every detail of the bustling street sharpening his anxiety. He fiddled with the collar of his tailored shirt, a vestige of the world he was trying to escape. There she was across the street, her presence striking despite the ordinary atmosphere. He wrestled with the array of emotions as he watched her approach, each step crafted with caution. Their eyes met, a language exchanged without words, heavy with unspoken history. As she drew nearer, he recalled moments adorned with laughter and ambition, fraught with connection. But it wasn't just nostalgia, it felt as if he were standing on the threshold of opportunity. "Hi," he said, as they settled at a table in the corner. The cafe buzzed around them, yet it felt as if they were sealed in their own world. "Thank you for coming." Sophie looked at him, her expression unreadable, layered with defensiveness and curiosity. "Why the sudden interest in my art scene, Ethan? We both know you could have done this a long time ago." He inhaled sharply, her challenge ringing true. This wasn't just about the gallery's opportunity. This was about accountability too. "You're right. I let my success blind me, and I lost sight of what truly matters." Her sharp gaze softened slightly, but the tension didn't dissipate. He dared to lean in closer, the gravity of the moment anchoring him. "I want to help you, Sophie. This show, it's your chance. But more than that, I want you to see me differently. Not just as a CEO, but as someone who is searching for something real." A flicker of vulnerability appeared in her eyes. "And what if I can't trust you?" The question hung between them, opening a chasm of unhealed wounds. Still, that vulnerability sparked something within him, a desire to prove he had changed. "Then let me earn it." Just as there was a flicker of what felt like understanding in her features, a sudden disagreement erupted at a nearby table. Shadows of anger crossed the cafe, momentarily diverting their attention, and Ethan felt the decision weighing on him like an anvil. Could he rise to the occasion when the past continued to intertwine itself with the present? As he turned back to Sophie, the atmosphere felt heavy with unresolved potential. He wondered if they could reshape their future together, or if he would simply end up repeating old mistakes. The conversation shifted as they navigated through memories and hopes, yet the undertow of distrust never fully released its grip. The question loomed larger: would he triumph over the ghosts of his past, or would he once again falter under the weight of his choices? Ethan's journey had barely begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. But this time, he would not shy away from the challenge. He prepared for the tough questions sure to come, his heart racing in anticipation, as if standing on the cusp of a precipice, ready to leap. The moment of truth lay ahead, and uncertainty wrapped around him, promising either redemption or further conflict. Would Ethan conquer his fear and face the real challenges of their renewed bond, or would shadows from his history dictate his fate yet again? Ethan's heart raced as their conversation resumed, the tension thick enough to slice through. He struggled to maintain focus, the erratic heartbeat in his chest mixed with the swirling thoughts in his mind. Each minute that passed felt like a small eternity, every glance exchanged laden with the weight of what remained unspoken. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" Sophie's question cut through the ambient noise of the cafe. It wasn't accusatory, it was genuine, an invitation for honesty. He had to navigate this fragile moment carefully. "I want you to know that I'm not the same man who walked away," he stated, determined to convey sincerity. "How do I know that?" She leaned back slightly, arms crossed, a defensive posture that signaled her hesitance. Her skepticism mirrored his own inner doubts, and he quickly reviewed what he knew about himself. What had he done to demonstrate growth? He could list symbols of success, but did they matter here? "I understand if you can't trust me, but this isn't just about the art show. I'm tired of measuring worth through profits and transactions. I want to create something meaningful, something that honors you and your work." A spark of surprise flickered across her face, as though she hadn't anticipated such a heartfelt reveal. Yet her expression remained cautious, like a flower struggling to bloom in inhospitable soil. "You turned your back on us once. Why would it be different now?" "Because I've changed," he almost shouted in his mind. The truth of it unfurled within him, but he needed to articulate it without desperation. "This time, I want to prioritize what I neglected. Relationships matter more than the accolades. I realize that my success felt hollow without the people I care about, and it starts with you." Sophie studied him for a long moment, her fierce gaze searching for fissures in his resolve. He wanted to squirm under that scrutiny. Instead, he held steady, acknowledging the history they shared. "I have to see the proof in your actions, Ethan." "Words are easy," she finally responded, her tone lightly softened by the reluctant authenticity of her own vulnerability. As hope burgeoned within him, he sensed a challenge: actions over words, a fundamental truth he'd often overlooked. How could he demonstrate that he valued their connection without slipping back into old habits? "I'll show you," he promised, feeling the weight of accountability settle on his shoulders. "Let me help with the show. I'll reach out to galleries and curators. I want to create a platform for artists like you, to amplify voices that I failed to support before." Sophie's silence spoke volumes, a blend of consideration and skepticism swirling in her expression. The ambience of the cafe faded around them as he caught a glimpse of the earnest artist she had always been beneath the layers of self-protection. "This isn't just about your career," he pressed further. "It's about reigniting a spark that's been lost between us. Trust is built over time," she acknowledged quietly, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of openness in her eyes. "But it can also be shattered in an instant," Ethan countered, the contours of his own past weighing heavily on his conscience. He grasped this wasn't merely a chance for professional redemption, it could lead to personal transformation. As their conversation ebbed and flowed, Ethan felt like a diver before a plunge, the water beneath both inviting and intimidating. He had a chance to explore this uncharted territory, yet uncertainty loomed. Was he excavating a pathway to healing, or simply unearthing further conflict? The realization struck him: he couldn't engineer the outcome, nor could he control Sophie's response. All he could do was present his truth and hope it resonated, but what if it didn't? He was standing on the precipice of both opportunity and vulnerability, grappling with the knowledge that the very act of reaching out threatened the equilibrium of their strained relationship. Would this new approach truly foster the connection he sought, or would old wounds prove too deep? As he locked eyes with Sophie, he sensed the choice hung between them: either ascend together into a renewed understanding, or risk a descent back into silence. Ethan took a deep breath, preparing not just for a promise of change but for the inevitable introspection that lay ahead. The past shadowed them still, but it was as if they stood at the threshold of new dawn. The uncharted path before them was fraught with uncertainty, and the reality settled: trust, once lost, required precision and courage to be remedied. But as he considered their dynamic, a glimmer of possibility ignited within him. Maybe confronting his past more openly could propel him toward a future he hadn't dared to envision. After all, the time had come to face not only the fears that plagued him but the truths hidden within their mutual history. The stakes had risen, leaving him teetering on the edge of a precarious transformation. Would he summon the courage to plunge into that unknown, willing to explore the depths with Sophie by his side, or would he retreat back to safety, sacrificing growth for familiar comfort? Ethan pushed beyond the fragile moment they had shared, his determination blossoming amid the uncertainty. The cafe's chatter faded into an indistinct blur as the weight of his commitment settled more heavily within him. With each passing thought, he made a mental list of how to transform his promise into action. He would start by reaching deep into his network, seeking connections not for profit but for passion. As he left the cafe, Ethan's mind raced with ideas: curators, gallery spaces, emerging artists, each name a step on the path he needed to carve out with care. But beyond logistics, it was crucial that he convince Sophie he intended to build anew from the ground up, not just with art but also with the shared trust they had once fostered. In the days that followed, he transformed his home office into a makeshift command center, filled with sketches of potential exhibits and profiles of artists he wanted to court. Each call made, each email sent, resonated with a dual purpose: professional ambition and personal redemption. The first few attempts at reaching out were met with mixed responses. Some curators, intrigued by his new approach, offered their assistance, while others dismissed his outreach as an opportunistic comeback. With each rejection, a wave of doubt washed over him. Was he truly changing, or merely dressing up old habits in new clothes? Late one evening, while poring over the details of a gallery application, his phone buzzed with an unexpected message from Sophie. She wanted to catch up no cafe this time. Instead, she suggested meeting at a community art space. The request sent a surge of anxiety through him. This was a space where voices often went unheard, artists striving for recognition without the corporate sheen he had so long embraced. Ethan arrived early, allowing the buzz of anticipation to mingle with the barbed edge of insecurity. As he stood in the gallery, sensory memories unfolded: the scent of paints and varnishes, the hum of spontaneous conversation among artists, all lapses from the life he once led and the journey he now sought. Would Sophie see this setting as a legitimate step toward their shared future, or would it unveil his struggles even more starkly than he anticipated? When she arrived, there was an air of curiosity about her. As they surveyed the eclectic art that adorned the walls, he seized the moment to lay bare his vision. "I want this show to represent real connections, to amplify voices that deserve to be heard," he stated, feeling the warmth of sincerity swell in his chest. "Do you even know what that means?" Sophie raised an eyebrow, a challenge lingering in her tone. He caught a glimpse of the once familiar fire inside her, the passion that had initially drawn him to her. "It means letting go of the old me," he replied, allowing vulnerability to spill over. "It means understanding that the business of art has to start with authenticity, our shared past and my present willingness to change." As they talked, he noticed small shifts, her shoulders relaxing incrementally, the flicker of curiosity in her eyes transforming into an invitation for dialogue. For the first time, it felt like she was truly listening. She wasn't just scrutinizing him but also contemplating what this meant for her. Yet while hopeful, Ethan felt the shadows of fear looming nearby. Was she willing to embrace this new partnership? Could they navigate the complexities of re-establishing trust? Just when he thought they were drawing closer, Sophie posed the question that pierced through his newfound optimism. "What if it all falls apart again, Ethan? What then?" In that moment, the depth of her fear resonated painfully within him. The stakes had shifted from his professional endeavors to their relationship, laying bare the fundamental truths they both had to confront. Ethan realized the uncertainty of the outcome was only part of the burden of trust. He needed to face it boldly, acknowledging that the journey ahead demanded perseverance in the face of potential failure. He took a breath. "Then we learn, we adapt. We build again if we have to. We face it together." But as he said those words, a pang of doubt echoed silently through him. Would he be able to uphold this promise? The path forward now seemed endless, fraught with both opportunity and uncertainty. Ethan's resolve solidified around him as he met Sophie's searching gaze. The moment was charged with potential, but it danced precariously along the edge of hesitation. What would happen next could redefine their connection forever. This new chapter could lead to triumph or heartbreak. His heart thudded in his chest, and with a flicker of determination, he realized that he had to stand firm in his commitment, not just to her but also to the change developing within himself. Could he truly transform fear into an alliance, or would he falter once again? As the echoing silence grew, the answers to those questions hung between them, waiting to be unearthed. Ethan felt the weight of the moment press upon him as Sophie's gaze bore into his. Her question lingered, a specter of doubt wrapping around his newfound resolve. He could sense the walls of her heart, still fortifying against betrayal, and the thought unsettled him. This wasn't merely an exhibition he was trying to mount, this was about rebuilding a bridge that had once connected them deeply. He took a step back, swallowing the lump forming in his throat. What had he truly committed to? Was this path genuine or merely a whim driven by nostalgia? The vibrant canvases surrounding them seemed to mock his internal struggle. They were symbols of expression, while he felt shackled by uncertainty. Every brushstroke was an entity unto itself, each piece a testament to vulnerability, to raw emotion, just what he needed to master the art of reconciliation. "I need to show you that I'm different," he said slowly, digging deep for conviction. "This isn't just about reviving the past, it's about creating a future that honors our story and others like ours." Sophie studied him, and in that heavy silence, he could practically hear her weighing his words against memories of disappointment. The flicker of hope he'd seen in her eyes earlier began to dim, and in that moment, Ethan realized his immediate task wasn't merely to convince her of change. It was to dismantle the skepticism that had grown from their shared history. A thought sparked inside him, a revelation upon which he could build. Ethan had always been adept at celebrating artists but had often overlooked the intrinsic value of storytelling in his own life, the narrative that was still unfolding. Perhaps he needed to weave himself into the very fabric of the exhibition he envisioned, infusing it with personal truths, a tapestry rich enough to display the spectrum of his commitments, both to his craft and to Sophie. "Let us collaborate on this," he proposed, suddenly energized by the notion. "We can invite artists who focus on redemption, transformation. Their voices will speak what we might find difficult to articulate." Her brow furrowed, not yet convinced, but he pressed forward. "Imagine the stories of people who have chipped away at their own pasts, who have fought to rewrite their narratives. We can curate something that embodies our struggles." Ethan watched as Sophie pondered this. Slowly, a spark ignited within her expressions. "Those stories are powerful, and they deserve to be told," she acknowledged, though her tone carried an edge of caution. "That's where I can begin my real transformation," Ethan replied, daring to match her intense gaze. "Art isn't just my profession, it's a conduit for connection and growth. Pristine galleries are wonderful, but I want to dig deep into this art scene, to uncover what's raw and real. Just like us." With every word, he could feel them inching forward, exploring possibilities wrapped within this fragile conversation. But even as he began to see the bonds of trust forging anew, a rush of self-doubt caught him off guard. How would he manage the weight of his promise amid the daunting task ahead, one that bore the high stakes of his personal life intertwined with his professional rebirth? Sophie's expression hinted at understanding, but the shadows of hesitation still danced behind her eyes. A moment of silence loomed again, one that felt pregnant with both promise and peril. He often thought of success in terms of accolades and recognition. Now, it seemed his biggest trial would be the act of connecting with someone who mattered most. As they began to brainstorm possibilities, exploring the threads that could bind the exhibit together, Ethan felt adrenaline course through him. With every potential artist they discussed, every story they contemplated sharing, his resolve grew. This was not merely a project, it was a testament to his commitment to change. Yet as they exchanged ideas, Ethan couldn't shake the underlying feeling that his path was still precarious. Beneath the bond forming between them lingered the question of whether they could weather future storms. "Ethan, there's something you need to consider," Sophie began, her tone shifting from curiosity to caution. His heart skipped. Would this be the moment where everything shifted again? The words hung in the air around them, electric with unspoken implications, each pulse echoing with uncertainty. Would he be ready for what came next? As he met her gaze, the weight of the moment loomed, ready to redefine the contours of their relationship once more. Ethan held his breath, steadying his racing heart as Sophie's words hovered in the air. The unspoken weight of their shared past pressed against him, demanding acknowledgement and resolution. Just as he braced himself for what was to come, a familiar ache clawed at the edges of his consciousness, the fear of being insufficient yet again. "I know how passionate you are about this project," Sophie continued, her voice steady but laced with a hint of trepidation. "But we've got to be real here. This journey isn't just about you transforming through art, it requires mutual trust." The challenge in her voice ignited a defensive spark within him, yet he fought it down, recognizing it as part of his growth. "Trust is built on consistency," he considered, already pondering the strides he needed to take. "If we make this work, it's not just on you to believe in me, it's about showing up, being present, and committing to the process together." Sophie studied him closely, the tension between them heavy yet electrifying. He sensed her thoughts racing, measuring not just his intentions but also the possibility of their collective investment. The thought was daunting: could they truly rebuild something that once felt so solid, only to be shattered? "I get it," she finally replied, her tone softening. "But trust takes time," and she hesitated, clearly wrestling with her own fears. "You'll need to confront your past mistakes seriously, Ethan. It's not just a project to fix things. It demands real introspection." A flicker of realization cut through the muddle in his thoughts. Perhaps this was precisely the moment he'd been seeking, the catalyst that could propel him out of old patterns. If he truly wanted to embrace this opportunity to demonstrate change, he had to confront the deeper currents of his journey, the instances that had contributed to their initial fracture. "What if I shared my story?" he proposed, a wave of vulnerability washing over him. "Not just as a curator, but as someone who has stumbled, someone who is flawed. Perhaps an opening piece capturing my darkest moments might showcase the essence of vulnerability that embodies the artists we hope to invite." Sophie's eyes widened, surprise sparking within them. "You do that? Share your failures alongside their successes?" It was a speculative leap, but as he spoke, Ethan felt clarity settling in. His own life had not been a glimmering ascent, it had been marred by impulses, errors, and repercussions he had avoided acknowledging. "Yes, it might resonate with others," he said, emboldened now. "It's not merely about creating something beautiful. It's about being raw, authentic, and showing that healing comes from pain, not erasure." Sophie nodded slowly, her expression shifting. He could see the gears turning in her mind, considering this potential pivot in their collaboration. "That's quite brave," she murmured, a hint of admiration emerging in her tone. "And necessary," he added, feeling invigorated by the dialogue and the prospect of stripping away layers to expose the truth. But even as hope blossomed, a visceral tension gripped him at the thought of facing those buried stories. Could he truly back them up with actions that denoted growth? "Ethan," Sophie's voice shifted back to caution, yet there was a warmth laced within it. "Being open about your past will be one thing, but it also opens you up to judgment. Can you handle that?" The question struck him hard, igniting questions he wasn't sure he had the answers to yet. Would he be prepared for inquisition, for potential backlash from those who once cheered him on? He opened his mouth to respond, but found himself stammering, grappling with his truth. I need to consider that," he finally replied, realizing that vulnerability demanded not just courage, but also resilience. As they moved further into planning, the realization that embracing his past could be an integral part of reshaping his narrative provided fresh energy. Perhaps this exhibition could serve as both a canvas for others and a backdrop against which he would redefine himself, yet, looming steadily was the harsh truth that opening this door to his past might also unleash harrowing memories that could threaten the fragile trust they were building. Would he find the strength to face what lay within? Suddenly, Sophie's phone chimed, pulling her attention momentarily away. A quick glance at the screen made her expression shift, reality cutting through the hopeful atmosphere they'd been nurturing. "Ethan," she said suddenly, urgency creeping into her voice. "I have to take this call. It's about the funding for the exhibition." As she took a few steps away, the disconnect wrapped around him. In a heartbeat, the tension he'd begun to dismantle threatened to re-emerge. What if this call brought news that could derail their plans entirely? The weight of what he had yet to confront loomed larger, the elusive promise of the future feeling suddenly fragile again. Could he grasp hold of the momentum they had created, or would seeds of doubt blossom anew? The answer felt just out of reach, hanging like a delicate thread that could snap at any moment. Ethan stood alone, the air thick with unarticulated thoughts and lingering tension. Sophie's absence created an echo of uncertainty, amplifying every flicker of doubt in his mind. The prospect of sharing his story had stirred something within him, but vulnerability, he realized, also entailed risk. He shifted on his feet, the ground beneath him feeling less certain with every passing second. Would his revelations resonate, or would they merely expose his insecurities to the scrutiny he had long evaded? in the stillness, Ethan instinctively reached for his phone, searching for distractions. Scrolling mindlessly through social media, he caught glimpses of curated lives on display, success stories that only deepened his self-doubt. Could he ever measure up? Perhaps sharing his past would only solidify the notion that he was the outlier, flawed beyond redemption, but rather than succumbing to the spiral of comparison, he chose to reflect. He sank into the closest chair, drawing a breath that steadied his racing thoughts. What had led him to this pivotal moment? Engagement with self-doubt had become a habitual dance, but now it felt more like a battleground. He had to confront the fears that clung like shadows. Flashes of his past surged forward: failed relationships, reckless decisions, moments of silence that should have spoken volumes. Each memory tugged at the growing flame of urgency to reconstruct his narrative. But transparency meant exposure to the lingering judgment of others, and there lay the heart of his hesitation. Could he withstand the potential fallout? Suddenly, clarity sparked within him, a piercing realization that he could not fully embrace authenticity while shackled to fear. His vision could not solely reside in others' perceptions. Ethan recalled a workshop he attended years ago, where a mentor had emphasized the importance of owning one's journey. He had been inspired by the way sharing vulnerable moments could create connections, rendering him more relatable. Perhaps the same principle applied here, as he pondered how his struggles could illuminate paths for others grappling with their journeys. As Sophie returned, her expression still tinged with urgency but softened by curiosity, he felt poised to lay the groundwork for a new direction. "Sophie," he started, his voice steadier than before. "I want to approach this project differently. I want to share my own story of struggles, not just the artist's. It could be the key to establishing something genuine." Sophie's eyes brightened, but the concern on her face remained. "Are you sure you're ready for that? This could bring up things you haven't dealt with." His heart raced, but determination washed over him like a cleansing wave. "I need this, and I think others will too." He could see the hesitation wavering in her gaze, shifting from apprehension to cautious optimism. "It's a chance to show that vulnerability can forge deeper connections. You've mentioned trust. This might just be how we build it." "Okay," Sophie relented, her voice soothing yet firm. "Then we have work to do. But prepare yourself, this journey will require more than just a willingness to share." Ethan nodded, a newfound sense of purpose propelling him forward. They brainstormed different angles for the exhibition, intertwining themes of pain and healing, resurgence and creativity. Every shared idea fostered a growing sense of collaboration and understanding, yet, buried within that shared enthusiasm lay an unsettling reminder of the past, one that would not remain dormant for long. Ethan could feel the specter of past failures re-emerging, the painful truths he would have to confront. How could he transform his vulnerabilities into strengths when shadows still lingered? As they concluded their planning for the night, Ethan felt both exhilaration and dread intertwining. He was on the cusp of creating something transformative, yet he realized that the journey would demand that he grapple with his own demons, perhaps even rekindle relationships that had long turned cold or bitter. Every decision he had to make from this point held the potential to either propel him toward liberation or plunge him back into an abyss he had worked hard to escape. Tomorrow would bring the first steps into this uncharted territory, but what awaited him would not only challenge his artistic ambitions, but also his very sense of self. Could he rise to meet both the project and his past with courage, or would he falter yet again, risking the newfound connection with Sophie? He felt certain of one thing: the struggle to embrace authenticity was just beginning. How much of his past would he need to face head-on to claim a promising future? The clock ticked, reminding him that time was running out to find those answers. Ethan awoke the next morning, the weight of the previous night's revelations pressing heavily on his chest. The sunlight streamed through his window, casting harsh light on shadows that seemed to mock his resolve. Today was the day he began to peel back layers long buried, and with each passing moment, his excitement was intertwined with a gnawing anxiety that clung to him like a second skin. He sat at his kitchen table, coffee steaming in front of him, the aroma filling the space while his mind wandered. What would he uncover? Would reliving those moments of pain also unearth something beautiful? With a firm grip on his mug, Ethan made a list. He needed to identify key moments in his life that had shaped him, instances he feared but knew he had to confront. Each event was a thread in the fabric of his identity, and he mustn't overlook any, no matter how uncomfortable. The first item, the end of his last significant relationship. He recalled the bitter words exchanged, the feelings of inadequacy that had seeped into his core. It was then he discovered how easily connections could shatter, leaving behind jagged pieces that were difficult to reassemble. Taking a deep breath, he reconsidered that moment from a different perspective. How did that experience mold his current understanding of intimacy? How could he articulate the frustration of feeling unheard in that relationship, poetically painting the ugly alongside the beautiful? His pen scratched against the paper, the act itself, almost cathartic. He didn't just want to share a story, he wanted to explore its impact, to invite others into the vulnerabilities inhabiting his past. But the words felt heavy as he pressed onward. Would those who read it understand his essence, or would they only see the fragility, the errors? Midway through his reflections, a notification pulled him from his thoughts. It was Sophie, reminding him of their meeting later that afternoon. The exchange sparked a new wave of determination. He would have to bring the list to her, show her the raw bits he intended to share. Her comfort and criticism would be invaluable, and despite his fears, transforming the fog of uncertainty into clarity was essential. As the day moved forward, he busied himself with light tasks, trying to cultivate a focus that felt elusive. However, even mundane activities echoed with thoughts of his past. Each interaction he had with strangers, the laughter of children in the streets, reminded him of his connections, those he wanted to rekindle and those he'd let slip away. With each ticking hour, the sensation of inevitability grew stronger. The time had come to articulate those fears, and Ethan was wrestling with questions that rooted deeply within. How would he reconcile his hesitant desire to unveil the self he had kept hidden? Each potential revelation felt like a risk, a step off a precipice where he could plummet or soar. Finally, the moment arrived. He met Sophie at a small cafe, her presence offering a comforting grounding force. As she greeted him with a warm smile, her eyes captured the flicker of vulnerability he was still nurturing inside himself. "Do you have it ready?" she asked, clearly eager yet concerned. Ethan nodded slowly, presenting the list that now felt like a fragile promise. "I've drafted some ideas, but there's more to it than just words." Sophie's brows furrowed in concentration as she studied his draft, her intent gaze igniting something in him. He had to share why he felt compelled to tell his story. But would laying bare his soul strengthen the partnership, or would it create a chasm between them? Her eyes flicked up to meet his as she spoke. "You're not just looking to share, you're aiming to connect, aren't you?" He realized then, that he wasn't merely confronting his past. This was about cultivating empathy, both for himself and for those who would encounter his story. The stakes were rising as he prepared to walk the line between authenticity and vulnerability. But another question pulsed beneath the surface. As he embarked on this journey, would he have the strength to face what lay hidden in the darkness of his experiences? And more importantly, what skeletons might he still unearth along the way? Ethan took a deep breath, ready to dive into those uncharted waters. The path before him was unclear, yet the desire to embrace and excavate his narrative swelled within him. He had to be prepared for the questions that would inevitably arise, both from Sophie and from himself. Tomorrow would be pivotal. He would begin to reshape his past. But would he emerge transformed, or uncover something that would shatter his resolve? The uncertainty loomed heavily, reminiscent of a storm brewing just out of sight. Ethan found himself standing before a blank canvas, a stark metaphor for his life and the exhibition he was about to curate with Sophie. It had taken weeks of deep reflection and personal excavation to arrive at this moment. His journey to embrace vulnerability was not only an artistic endeavor but also a personal transformation that required an unwavering commitment to confront the past. As the deadline for their exhibition loomed, promise and trepidation swirled through him like an exhilarating tempest. On the day of the showcase, Ethan emerged from the shadows of his introspective journey, stepping into the gallery that now glowed with the fruits of their labor. Adorning the walls were not just art pieces but raw expressions of human struggle and resilience, mirroring the tumultuous journey he had undertaken. The artist's stories intertwined with his own, creating a rich tapestry of hope. Today marked a culmination of their collective visions, a renaissance born from the ashes of vulnerability. As guests filed in, apprehension fluttered in his chest. Would his efforts to cultivate trust with Sophie pay off? Had his commitment to authenticity resonated with her, and more importantly, with the audience? As he mingled with viewers, he could feel the energy in the room, the buzz of conversations igniting not just interest in the art, but warmth among the people gathered. When Sophie arrived, he caught a glimpse of pride in her eyes. She meticulously moved through the space, sharing the significance behind each artist's work with an inviting fervor that showcased her depth of understanding. Ethan dared to hope that with every word, she recognized the depth of transformation that had taken root not just in the gallery but within him as well. Their collaboration symbolized more than just an exhibition, it was a testament to growth and regained trust, a mutual celebration of second chances. The moment that defined the night came unexpectedly. As they prepared to give a joint speech to the eager audience, Sophie turned to him with a nod of encouragement. It was now or never. With a firm grip on the podium, he took a deep breath and began to speak. Tonight, we unveil more than just art. We unveil stories, unfiltered, unapologetic stories of our respective journeys. This space becomes a sanctuary for vulnerability, a place where our interconnected pasts find freedom. Ethan poured his heart into the words, sharing fragments of his struggles, the emotional injuries of past relationships that had once shackled him. He spoke candidly of his encounters with isolation and fear, illuminating the lining between wealth and substance. The authenticity in his voice transcended the gallery, igniting an emotional resonance with the audience. As he made eye contact with Sophie, he saw something he yearned for, the spark of understanding he had sought since reconnecting. In that moment, she stood beside him, bearing witness to his transformation as he articulated a vision built on empathy and growth. When they concluded their speech, he felt an unshakable confidence settle over him. He had conquered a vital part of his journey, standing not only as a curator but as a man who had embraced his own vulnerabilities. Applause erupted around them, bathing them in validation. A curator from a prominent gallery approached them later, expressing keen interest in showcasing their collaborative efforts further. It was a moment of recognition, a testimony to their hard work and acknowledgement that Ethan's efforts to evolve and redefine his purpose had indeed paid off. Ethan felt a swell of fulfillment. He didn't just achieve professional success tonight, he conquered self-doubt, proving to himself and to Sophie that change was possible. The applause echoed in his heart, a declaration that he was not only a billionaire but a man capable of deep connection, one who could intertwine wealth with meaning. As the evening waned and people continued to linger, exchanging stories and making connections, Ethan stepped away for a moment, enveloped by a wave of gratitude. He had taken the leap, faced the scrutiny of his past, and emerged ready to embrace what lay ahead. He had rekindled a connection with Sophie that transcended their previous history, proving that growth could emerge from pain. In the days that followed, Ethan threw himself into the art community, fostering relationships not solely for business but in a spirit of authenticity and collaboration. The gallery project paved the way for further exhibitions, a continuation of their commitment to honoring struggles and showcasing talents untethered by wealth or elitism. Ethan emerged, not as the solitary billionaire he once was, but as a connector, one who understood that individual growth flourished within the fabric of relationships. He had faced the shadows of his past and reshaped the narrative of his life. Now, time stood still as he reflected on all he had achieved. The chasm once separating him from authentic connection had been narrowed. Today, he was no longer bound by solitude but freed by purpose, fulfilled through genuine connection and the unfolding of human stories. He stood on the precipice of a new era, his transformation complete, the future vibrant with possibility. Be the architect of your own transformation. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible journeys of personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and amplify the voices that matter. Comment your reactions and theories about this journey. Your insights could inspire others. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to make an impact.